the terrorism of this regime and helping to restore human rights, dignity, and freedom to the Iranian people. I want to thank you for coming to be here today, particularly to the Edward M. Kennedy Caucus Room. That name means a great deal to me, more than most people would know. I had the privilege of working for Senator Kennedy for 7 years as his national security advisor. Senator Kennedy taught me a lot, and most importantly, he taught me that American policy and foreign policy must be bipartisan, must be effective, and must ensure success. So when NCRI scheduled this event over a month ago, no one could have predicted that it would occur against the backdrop of the toppling of the despised Assad dictatorship, an event that sets the stage for confronting the mullahs on their home turf, a unique inflection point. I don't like to use this phrase, inflection point, but this really is one of those rare moments where this regime is on its back foot. The world is witnessing a once-in-a-lifetime development, because behind the feared facade of the Iranian dictatorship and its terror exporters lies a regime that is unable to provide any means to its own people and denying them the freedom that they deserve. Today, ladies and gentlemen, you will hear from a bipartisan group of distinguished experts and the senators who will share new proposals that will enable the United States to seize this unique moment to enhance our national security as well. We Americans sometimes forget that while Iran has forged an axis of resistance that has placed our allies in mortal danger, it is on the cusp of developing a nuclear bomb while plotting and planning assassinations in the United States, interdicting our social media platforms, trying to kidnap American citizens. And we have stood still all far too long and let the mullahs get away with it. Today, our keynote address will come from Mrs. Maryam Rajavi, the President-elect of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, whose inspirational leadership is an inspiration not only to us, but also to the Iranian people and to freedom-loving people everywhere. I've had the privilege of knowing Madam Rajavi, and I can tell you one thing that has made it very clear to me. Her commitment, her leadership, her dedication has galvanized a worldwide opposition into a major coalition that is determined to seize this moment. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we set the stage for hearing from her and her ideas. Thank you very much, Madam Rajavi. We welcome you here, and we wish you were here with us in person.
Ambassador Ginsberg, thank you for your kind words. Senator Tillis, Senator Shaheen, Senator Cruz, Senator Booker, General Jones, General Walters, General Kellogg, Ambassador Brownback, distinguished guests, greetings to all of you. Your conference is very timely in highlighting a correct policy on Iran. Recent developments, including the overthrow of the Syrian dictatorship, have dealt a strategic blow to the clerical regime. The regime's main proxy force, the Hezbollah in Lebanon, has also suffered a significant setback. The world witnessed how Assad's armed forces and tens of thousands of Quds force proxies melted like snow under the summer sun. There should be no doubt that the Revolutionary Guards and all other oppressive forces in Iran will not be able to stand against the anger of the Iranian people and their nationwide uprising. A year ago, Khamenei turned to war in the Middle East to divert attention from domestic issues and to prevent another nationwide protest in Iran. Such wars are the last resort of dictatorships on the brink of collapse. However, this strategy backfired. The clerical regime is the strategic loser of the war it started. For many years, the elected representatives of the United States in both chambers of the Congress have repeatedly supported a correct policy toward the religious fascism ruling Iran. The validity of their viewpoint is now confirmed by significant developments ongoing inside and outside Iran. A powerful protest movement has taken root in Iranian society. Despite severe repression, the organized resistance in Iran has managed to expand and over the past year has demonstrated its presence through thousands of activities carried out by resistance units. Recently, the regime reacted by issuing death sentences for 9 of the PMOI supporters. Over the past 4 decades, various U.S. administrations have made numerous efforts to persuade the Iranian regime to abandon terrorism and its efforts to destabilize the region and to obtain nuclear weapons. However, the regime's response has always been the same: deception, blackmail, hostage-taking, and ultimately escalating aggression. The correct and viable solution is the overthrow of this regime by the people of Iran and the Iranian resistance. This goal is not only attainable, but it is within reach. As far as the role of the international community is concerned, the central element is recognizing the Iranian people's right to overthrow the regime and the decisive role of the Iranian resistance. There is an organized resistance and an alternative in Iran with vast social support and a declared political platform. The international community, particularly the United States, is expected to hold the Iranian regime accountable for its widespread domestic repression, terrorism, warmongering, and its nuclear weapons and missile programs. The international community must stand with the people of Iran and its fight for freedom. Distinguished guests, I have consistently emphasized that our goal is not to seize power, but to restore it to its rightful owners, the people of Iran and their vote. Our resistance has a practical roadmap for regime change and establishing a free and democratic society. The people who are deeply discontent and angry, along with the resistance units, are part of the army of freedom and the main force for change in Iran. They are preparing an organized uprising. The People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, PMOI, with thousands of experienced members, and Ashraf Tiri in Albania, that is one of its centers, and a democratic alternative, the National Council of Resistance of Iran, NCRI, with international credibility and a clear program, are leading this struggle. A wide range of Iranian experts make up an important part of the workforce needed to build Iran's future. After the regime's overthrow, based on the NCRI's plan, a provisional government will be formed for a maximum of 6 months. Its main task will be to hold free and fair elections for a constituent assembly. After that, power will be transferred to the representatives of the people in this assembly, who will elect a new government for a 2-year term to draft the constitution of the new republic. The existence of a competent alternative leaves no room for chaos. For a free Iran, this resistance emphasizes on the ballot box as the only criteria for legitimacy the freedoms and equal rights of women, the autonomy of ethnic groups, equality between Shia and Sunni Muslims and followers of other religions, and the separation of religion and state, defending peace in the Middle East and a non-nuclear Iran. Honorable lawmakers in the U.S. Senate, dear friends of the Iranian people, on behalf of the Iranian resistance, I would like to wish you and the people of the United States a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year in advance. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Your words of inspiration, your 10-point plan, all that you have done to bring together around the world 500 opposition groups under an umbrella of efforts to try to change this dreaded regime. I dare say that I've been to many a session where she has spoken in person, to see hundreds of thousands of people from around the world listen to her inspirational words and to respect and to join her leadership and her organization's efforts. It should be an inspiration. And by the way, her 10-point plan, I urge you to go to NCRI's website to read the plan that has been adopted by so many leaders in the opposition, both domestic and foreign, around the world. I now have the privilege of introducing Senator Tom Tillis. Senator Tillis is a member of the Senate Committee on the Judiciary. He is also the co-chair of the bipartisan Senate Human Rights Caucus. He's also a sponsor of Senate Resolution 599, which is entitled Protecting the Iranian Political Refugees, including female former political prisoners in Ashraf 3 in Albania. This important resolution that was co-sponsored by 20 bipartisan senators is actually going to receive more support in this new Senate thanks to Senator Tillis. Senator Tillis traveled to Ashraf 3 in Iraq, in Albania, and shortly after it was set up, and met with the leadership and Madam Rajavi there, and his leadership in helping to achieve the aspirations of the Iranian people for freedom and dignity is important to all of us. Senator Tillis, we welcome you.
Thank you all. Ambassadors, generals, I feel like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, this table that I'm sitting at here, but most importantly, thanks to everyone who's here at the lunch and many familiar faces. I'll be brief. I have to get to the Senate floor to offer a debate before we close it at noon. But I have to tell you, I've been tracking the Iranian situation since I worked in a warehouse in Nashville, Tennessee in 1979. A gentleman came in working in the warehouse, and I could tell he was of foreign origin, and I asked him where he's from, and he said he was from Persia. And I said, well, I am pretty familiar with geography. I don't think Persia is a country. And at that time, if you remember, that is how some Iranians would present themselves, because they were embarrassed or afraid to say that they were from Iran. Just think about that. I thought about what it would take for me to say in some other place that I'm from North America, that I was afraid or ashamed, maybe both, to say that I was from the United States of America. But in fact, the leaders, the mullahs of the Iranian people today have destroyed a heritage of thousands of years of good, freedom-loving people that are under the yoke of the totalitarian regime that runs Iran. So let me leave you with this. I've studied this for a few decades now, and I believe that that Miriam, I hope that that's okay, the president-elect understands how much I appreciate her decades of leadership, her vision for a peaceful transition, not one that results in empowering any other new set of leaders, but one that actually results in empowering the Iranian people. So that maybe that friend that I still maintain contact today, that friend that I met in a warehouse in 1979, will, like you, someday celebrate the victory of democracy in Tehran. Now I'll leave you with this. Syria represents a great opportunity, but we need to be patient and we need to be strategic. First and foremost, as a member of the U.S. Senate, we have to protect our troops who are in the region. Secondly, we have to prevent Iran from doing what it does all around the world. If it can't be on the forefront, as they were with the Assad regime, then they'll just resort to their terrorist tactics that they've metastasized throughout the globe. We need to hold them accountable. This is not a time to accommodate Iran. This is time to step up the pressure. This is a historic opportunity to hopefully lay the groundwork for a peaceful and democratic Syria, but along with it, a peaceful and democratic Iran. And you can count me in for getting more co-sponsors on 599 and making sure that the American people stand with those who want a free, modern, and safe and proud country called the country of Iran that every one of you want to be from and for. So God bless you all. In the time of the holidays, I hope you celebrate your holidays and say a prayer for the future of Iran.
Thank you so much, Senator Tillis, for your inspirational words and your leadership and all that you are doing to help send the important messages that the Iranian people want to hear from Washington as we go through this important transition here in our nation's capital. I now have the privilege of introducing Senator Jeanne Shaheen. Senator, I've had the privilege of spending a little time with you over the years, and you are terrific. You're great, and your leadership is terrific. Okay. And I say that because you have been so effective from your perch on so many different committees, the Foreign Relations Committee, for example, where you chair the Subcommittee on Europe and Regional Security Cooperation of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, as well as serving as a senior member of the Armed Services Committee, as well as the Appropriations Committee. That's a trifecta that every senator wished they had. But you're probably far too busy, but you came here because I know that you care deeply about the people of Iran, our national security, our regional allies, and I welcome you to the stage, and we're grateful to hear from you.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you so much, please. Thank you very much for that really generous introduction, and thank you all so much for welcoming me here, as you always do. I always feel at home when I'm here with all of you. And I appreciated Senator Tillis's remarks. As some of you know, he and I did a split-screen video to the World Forum last summer and he's been a wonderful partner, and he teed it up very well in terms of where we are with Iran right now. And we want to see Iran be next in terms of overthrowing. And as all of you know, Iran has been dealt a significant blow. The leadership in the country is on their back feet. The events in Syria demonstrate the fundamental weakness at the core of Iran's regional strategic policies. And I don't think anyone here is surprised by that, because you've been fighting that for many of you your entire lives. Assad's decades-long strategy of oppressing his own people, of spreading terror across the region, has finally run its course. And I think, as Senator Tillis said, we have to be thoughtful and patient to see how the rebel groups who have overthrown Assad, what they do next. But we all have to celebrate when a vicious dictator like Assad is gone, and the Assad family is gone. And today, what we're seeing in the Middle East is that Iran is projecting only weakness. Now is the time to think about how we invest more in the core values that we all share, of democracy, of human rights, of justice for everyone. And no one knows how to stand up for those values in the face of tyranny better than the Iranian people, again, because they have been doing it for such a long time. You know, and the people of Iran know firsthand, the dedication and the perseverance that's needed to stand up to autocracy, and including in Ashraf III in Albania. And I've had the opportunity to visit in Albania to meet with some of the folks who have been in Ashraf and to hear some of those stories. And I know that they're looking to the opportunity when they can go back to a free Iran. And as we look to the future, we have to think about ways to invest. As I said, we have to think about ways that we can continue to support the rights of the Iranian people to determine their own future, to elect their own government, to represent the values and the opportunities that exist there. I know that that's something that you all are working on, and we are interested. I'm interested. I know Senator Tillis is interested in this Senate. We are interested in thinking about how we can continue to partner with you and take advantage of this strategic opportunity that we have. So again, thank you all so much for everything you've done, for all the dignitaries who are here. Thank you for your continued fight. And for all of us, let's continue to work on this. We have an opportunity. We have to take advantage of it. Thank you all very much.
By the way, as if the senator doesn't have enough on her plate, she is about to be appointed ranking member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. So our congratulations to her as well. You know, when I listen to her remarks and we think about the challenges before us, one thing that is evident is that the agenda for the incoming Trump administration is a considerable challenge given what is taking place in the Middle East. The one thing I neglected to mention is how much we must be concerned that as the regime faces collapse around it and internal disintegration, it is rushing to build a nuclear weapon. How we stop Iran from obtaining what it considers to be the insurance to protect its regime is going to be one of the most important challenges of the incoming administration. We've had Senator Booker was going to join us. I know that he's going to be on his way. But in the meantime, I have the privilege of introducing to you Ambassador Sam Brownback. We cannot address the issue of human rights and religious freedom without mentioning Sam's incredible dedication, commitment, and work as 46th governor of the Sunflower State of Kansas, and in his post-government career serving as a leader, a global leader, to help bring freedom and dignity to the people of Iran. Until January of 2021, he served as the United States Ambassador at Large for International Religion and Freedom at the State Department, and he served as U.S. Senator from Kansas for 15 years. During this time, he worked assiduously to protect Mrs. Rajavi from the when the French government negotiated with the Iranian regime while carrying out its destructive agenda regarding the Iranian resistance. I need not remind many of you that it was just a few years ago when the NCRI organized its worldwide meeting in Paris. The Iranians plotted to blow up that meeting. Tens of thousands of people would have been murdered and injured. It shows you how much the Iranian government considers the NCRI a threat to its existence, to its very existence. And the French government, shall we say, did not show its best tricolor, or three colors, in consideration of the enormous challenge of apprehending those who were plotting and planning this terrible deed. So, Senator, Governor, we welcome you. Please join us up here.
Thank you, Ambassador. Appreciate that very much. Pleasure to be back here and in the halls in the Senate and in the Kennedy Caucus room. It's got such a special memory for so many people here. I've got one very direct, specific thought I would really like to leave with you of the moment we're in right now regarding Iran, the Middle East, and really indeed peace throughout the world. It's not only now or never, it's now or nuclear is where we are facing the moment right now. And I want to develop that briefly for you. It's not only now or never, it's now or nuclear. Either we will see a different regime in Iran shortly, soon, or we will be facing a nuclear Iran. And they've learned the lessons from North Korea and the Kim regime that the way to hold the whole world off is to go nuclear. You got to have the bomb. And once you have the bomb, everybody kind of backs off from you. They leave you alone. And we are now on the decision-making moment of what it will be like in the Middle East. Will you have a different, peaceful, democratic regime in Iran, or will you face a nuclearized, theocratic regime in Tehran whose theology supports the use of the bomb? They won't have a hesitancy to doing this based on their own theology, and this is a theocracy that we're facing. So one has to think in the terms of that. And this is critical. To the new incoming Trump administration, congratulations. Here's a hot potato. You got a big one in front of you. I applaud the maximum pressure campaign the first time around, which was quite effective. The second time around, it needs to be even more effective. The maximum pressure campaign needs to include all of the financial pieces to it, security, restraint, but it needs to add another component. It needs to have a political piece to it. It needs to be pushing and supporting the people on the ground in Iran and from around the world that are opposed to this regime, and do so publicly, and do so boldly, and do so clearly. They need the support. And here a lot of people say, okay, you know, now what are you really talking about with that? We are talking about we've got to have a different regime in Tehran, or this will be a nuclear regime, which we really, then you're looking at decades of some sort of standoff and a really difficult situation. And I want people to think in their mind when they're looking at the changing regime, a regime change in Iran, I want you to think about solidarity. And some of you, a lot of you aren't old enough to remember solidarity in the movement. You've read your history, though. You know that this was a key movement that opposed the regime in Poland, the communist regime in Poland, and the United States during the Reagan administration, and I've got my Reagan socks on, they supported solidarity. They supported Lech Walesa and the leadership that he gave at that point in time. They publicly, privately, they supported it in many different ways, that changing of regimes in Poland. We need to do the same thing this time around. We need to do it now, supporting the people like MEK, other groups that are opposed to this regime in Iran. So, stated clearly, the Maximum Pressure Campaign 2.0 must include a political pressure component, supporting the protesters, calling for an end to the dictators in Tehran. Now, Tehran's going to go into survival mode now. They're going to start saying, okay, we'll negotiate, we'll talk with people, we want to talk about the nuclear weapons. They're going to go into survival mode at this point in time, and we cannot let them go there. We cannot accept it. They have done this previously. They always come back, and then they get aggressive again. And moving forward, we don't want them. And also, remember, the people of Iran don't want this regime. They don't support this regime. Just like the people in Syria didn't support Assad. They were threatened and they were terrorized into being mollified while they were there, but they didn't support the regime, and the people of Iran don't support them. They don't support the regime, the theocracy, the ruling mullahs. There will be no peace in the Middle East as long as this regime is in control. We know that. Thank you for being here, for your decades of opposition to the theocracy. This is the moment to seize. It's not only now or never, it's now or nuclear. That's what we're facing. God bless you all.
God, that was so terrific, Sam, and so thoughtful. You got it so dead on. It was just terrific. Thank you for your remarks. As I have the privilege of introducing Senator Cory Booker, I want to say one word about him. First of all, Senator, congratulations on your elevation to the senior Democratic leadership of the conference. Yes, it is a well-deserved, and it's not only well-deserved, but you've earned the respect and admiration of us Democrats around the country. And we look forward to your helping to lead the party back to where it should be as compared to where it is right now. I also want to say one other word as I introduce the senator. There's a misperception in this town that being hard on Iran is strictly a Republican enterprise, that somehow or other Democrats are only prepared to appease the regime by offering it sanctions relief and believing that somehow or other this regime could be moderated. You've heard from Senator Shaheen a few moments ago. Senator Booker represents the mainstream of the Democratic Party's foreign policy establishment, who strongly believes that it is a bipartisan duty of the United States to defend our allies against this regime, to stop Iran from becoming a nuclear power, and most importantly, to bring freedom and dignity to the people of Iran. Senator, we welcome you. We're honored by your presence as a senior leader of the Foreign Relations Committee and as a leading member of the U.S. Senate. Thank you.
All right. Listen, I usually get such warm greetings, but that introduction, unbelievable, got me so excited I almost grew hair. Look, I'm here because of deep friendships. I look around here and I see people who are no longer friends. They're really like brothers and sisters of mine. Everywhere I go around this country, I meet people, Iranian Americans, who stand strong with American values and principles and know that something that Martin Luther King said is so true, that we are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. We're tied in a common garment of destiny, that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. What the Iranian people are suffering under, an unjust regime that conducts horrific violence against its own people, that violates human rights and civil rights, that tortures and kills and abducts people within their own country. That is not just an Iranian problem, that is an American problem. And we know, as Iran is the #1 exporter of global terrorism and violence and killing, that they export anti-democratic, vicious ideals, that we are not safe, that our cause is the Iranian people's cause, that injustice in that country upsets the global order. And this is no secret. I've sat with countries around the globe, from the African continent to Europe, and especially in the Middle East, who point to the most destabilizing actor in the Middle East. The real threat to the thriving of the Middle Eastern community is Iran. We have an urgent obligation now to stand together, not just as Americans, but stand together with global allies in making sure that this regime's suppression of its own people comes to an end. That we And so I am excited because my brothers and sisters who are in this room, the folks who have helped me and my office in so many ways, make sure that not just in the Democratic Party, but in the United States Senate, in a bipartisan way, we stand with the people of Iran. We stand with the ideals of justice. I'm so excited that I am a co-sponsor of Senate Resolution 599, introduced by Senator Tillis and Senator Shaheen. There is no separation between the parties when it comes to standing for justice for the Iranian people. And the protection of the Iranian diaspora in places like Albania. We must do everything for those folks who are taking refuge in Ashraf 3. They're deserving of their fundamental rights, and we must work together to ensure that they are upheld, that they are respected, and that we share a common cause. Now, I was excited to hear the ambassador. I was excited to come in here and immediately hear one of the greatest threats to our planet right now involves Iran's efforts to get a nuclear weapon. We must prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. It could destabilize the global order and create untold crisis. We must do everything to counter Iran's efforts using the funding of terrorists and their regional proxies that are upending peace and justice. We must work together to do everything we can to support the bravery and the resolve of Iranian men and women and children who stand up, who protest, who speak out, who have the courage to take to the streets in their nonviolent efforts for freedom, who've risked their safety. We must say unequivocally that we stand with them against the unchained oppression that they face. So, my brothers and my sisters, my friends in this room, I see the spirit rising across the world. I see more and more people understanding that we all share common cause when it comes to the oppression of the regime in Iran right now. I see more and more change happening around our planet, giving us more strength to our mission, more strength to our cause. We all in this world believe in peace. We all in this world believe in justice. But let me end with something a little deeper. I love the world's religions. I was just with a Sikh American in my office. I love Hinduism. I could go through the faiths that have helped me become a more deeply faithful person. But what I'm excited about is that I share a faith with many people in this room, which is being one of the three Abrahamic faiths. Really, this idea that Abraham, the father of three of our major world religions, believed deeply in certain ideals. Now, the story of Abraham welcoming strangers in the desert who then revealed themselves to be angels. I love that Abraham invited these strangers into his tent and showed them kindness and decency. I love that because that's what I get from the Iranian American community. People who have welcomed me with such love, such open heart, such abundance of goodwill. But what's even more important in that story is at the end of it, those angels say that we're going to go out and destroy a city. And does Abraham just say, that's okay, go ahead? No, Abraham argues with angels of God, argues with messengers of God for the ideal of justice. Well, the God of mercy, show mercy. These are the fundamental human values of humanity. That even though Abraham didn't live in that city that was going to be destroyed, didn't have family there, that he would stand up to fight for other people because of that common ideal. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I always tell people, before you tell me about your religion, first show it to me in how you treat other people. This is, for me, the greatest expression of our common faiths. Not by what we say or how we pray, but by what we do and how we stand up for other people. As long as I'm a United States Senator and beyond, as long as I have breath in my body, I will stand with the Iranian people against repression and injustice, because my cause and their cause are the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Booker. Thank you so much. You know, as I get set to introduce General Jones, keeping on our schedule, I have to share with you a personal anecdote. You know, I came to this desire to support the Iranian people because back in the Carter administration, I served as the special assistant to the Secretary of State during the fall of the Shah of Iran. And what is seared in my soul is how wrong we got our policy. I was merely 27 years old, witnessing our failures during that administration on how to deal with what we thought would be a return of democratic rule. And what we got instead was decades of oppression, terror, hatred, death, and destruction. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so dedicated to this cause, is because as someone who's grown up in this town, I personally witnessed the failures of our policy, and I'm witnessing them again and again. This time, as Senator Tillis said, and as Sam said, we must get it right. I have the, now I'd like to turn to introduce to you one of the great generals of this era, General Jim Jones, or James Jones, more formally, who served as the first national security advisor during President Obama's administration. And during his military career, he served as the 14th Supreme Allied Commander in Europe and 32nd Commandant of the Marine Corps. He has also served as chairman of the Atlantic Council, but most notably of all, ladies and gentlemen, he has gotten himself on the blacklist of the Iranian regime for supporting Madame Rajavi and the NCRI. General, we're proud of you. Okay. And we would like you to join us up here because you have taken not only personal risk, but you've committed your professional career to achieving the goals that we share here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your very kind introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to be here once again. I think in my 11th year of being associated with this wonderful crusade and this effort to topple a vicious regime that has caused so much damage in the world and still has the potential to wreak havoc in many parts of the world. Like many of you in this room, I was raised in a foreign land. In my case, my family moved to Europe in 1946 when I was 2 years old, and I grew up in France. And among the many benefits of living overseas as a young person, you tend to see your own country in a different light. And for me, that experience of living overseas during the Cold War and during all kinds of international difficulties allowed me to become very proud of my country for what it achieved in World War II. It allowed me to see how generous in military victory a country was equally generous in rebuilding Europe, at least Western Europe, and Japan. And it motivated me, I think, in my teenage years to dedicate myself to a lifetime of service in the American uniform worn by United States Marines after my father and my uncle. So as we look at the world today, ladies and gentlemen, particularly our young people here, we are in a battle involving autocracies and democracies. And I'll start at a very strategic level. It's no secret, and everybody knows, that Iran, Russia, North Korea, and China have embarked on a project to change the world that we live in. They must not be allowed to succeed. However, the consequences of our failure, of any failure to stand up to this new alliance, if you will, this new Cold War is also a hot war in some places, the consequences are serious. We must prevail. And the only way we prevail is for the United States and its friends and allies to unite and succeed and make sure that our potential enemies do not misunderstand our resolve or do not think that we have a lack of resolve. And nowhere is this more important than what's going on in the Middle East. The government, the regime in Iran is the head of the snake, and it has allowed for many years, for too long, for organizations like Hezbollah, the Hamas, the Houthis, and others to impede the progress of peace and prosperity, and has impeded the progress and the desire of the Iranian people to live free in a democratic regime. So this week we've witnessed yet another tectonic shift in the Syrian government. We'll wait and see what that means. But what it should mean to the people of Iran is that change is, in fact, possible in the Middle East. You may have to wait for it, but it will come. And I think that if I were a citizen of Iran in opposition to the regime, I would be very encouraged today to know that this is, in fact, possible. So the fall of Assad in Syria really means a diminution of Russian influence in the region. And I think this is very important because of the foursome of the four governments that I just mentioned, who will be lesser influential in what happens in the Middle East if we do the right thing. The change in the U.S. administration that is upcoming in the near future has already caused some tectonic shifts in the geographic alignments. One of the lessons I think that all of our speakers have alluded to, directly or indirectly, is that with regard to the regime in Iran, appeasement does not work. Full stop. Appeasement does not work. Another way of saying it is that the Iranian regime does not do nuance. There can be no mistake in how we communicate with that particular regime. The rise of U.S. energy leadership is something that's going to happen in the very near future. It is going to be one of the instruments in our vast array of ways to influence things around the world that we can bring to the table. The renewed emphasis on the necessity of having friends and allies is going to be very important. NATO has transformed itself from being a defensive, reactive alliance to one that is now routinely embraces out-of-area operations and has, under the leadership of people like General Walters and General Cavoli and others, have transformed itself to being a formidable barrier to any further encroachment on the European landmass, and serves as an example of what friends and allies can do when they want to work together to prevail on democratic ideals. As we go forward, I think in seeking and achieving regime change in Iran, public-private partnerships are going to be very important. It's one thing to topple a regime, but it's another thing to have a good plan for the day after that regime has been toppled. Make no mistake, Iran is on its heels, but it's still a very dangerous government. I hope that we will reject the idea of appeasement and look in a search for some hope that a moderate Iranian leader can somehow emerge. That is a pipe dream that has no validity. We have been led down that road many, many times, and it's time now to effect a strong policy that will effect a regime change as we pivot away from past failures. The Houthis, thank you. The Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, and others like them are all in a weakened condition, and that's a good thing. And we must take advantage of that weakened condition. The incoming President Trump has demanded a release of hostages by his inauguration day, or face consequences. We'll see what happens on that line. But once we say something like that, you can't walk away from it and pretend like it didn't happen. It's there. President Biden has said he will not allow Iran to gain nuclear weapons. Those statements have consequences. Those statements have real meaning. But you must have a plan to make sure that if that doesn't work, that you have the ability to back up that statement. Last year in Paris and in Berlin, we saw a powerful demonstration of support and intent by United States, Canadian, and European nations. In Paris, all the while in Berlin, 50,000 people marched in support of the NCRI, Mrs. Rajavi's leadership. Today we meet to recommit to the idea that, as in Syria, change is also coming to Iran. A clear democratic change based on Mrs. Rajavi's 10 points, which I've always labeled as Jeffersonian in principle. So what should we do in 2005? One, I would say continue the education of the American media and the American public with regard to the NCRI, what it is, what it isn't, and what its hopes and aspirations are. Second, continue to build congressional support for a free democratic Iran, as mentioned by the senators who stopped by. Number three, as Mrs. Rajavi indicated on the screen, give hope to the Iranian people that change is coming by talking about expectations the day after the regime falls. Number four, to the extent that you can improve on tightening sanctions on Iranian oil exports, I would recommend that that be strongly looked at. And number five, live up to not allowing Iran to develop nuclear weapons and delivery capability of those weapons. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in dangerous times, but dangerous times also have great possibilities. Iran is now recognized for what it is. The NCRI is increasingly recognized by the United States and global media as the voice of opposition for the future of Iran. Ladies and gentlemen, this room should be filled with people from the Senate staff. It should be filled with media. There should be a line out that door waiting to get in to talk about these issues. And for those of you who serve on Senate staffs, the next time we meet in this room, please bring 2 or 3 friends and build that line, because what we're talking about here today is really, really important. I carry a small book with me. This is the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. It is the oath of office is the one that the President makes and officers of the American military carry. I propose that in the near future, Iranian people be given a book that will have 2 things to it. Part 1 is Mrs. Rajavi's 10-point plans. You can. Part two is the Constitution, the new Constitution of the government of Iran. We'll work on this project, and I hope we have these books with a 10-point plan as a reminder that this is Jeffersonian democracy that we're talking about, and it is a bipartisan issue, and it is an issue that no American can dispute. Thank you very much.
Thank you, General Jones, for such a great talk. I think that General Jones could not have done a better job laying out the agenda that we have to pursue. I want to take a moment to thank the Senate staffers who are here. As a former Senate staffer, especially at this time, the fact that you're here means so much to people like us who know that without your continued support and your leadership, and most importantly, your ideas, nothing will be accomplished in Congress in the coming year. And I also want to thank the representatives from embassies that are here, concerned embassies whose diplomats share America's concern about Iran. I want to add one personal thought. I was raised in the Middle East. I've lost family members to Iran, being raised in Israel. I lost my brother to Hezbollah, and I lost my nephew a few months ago to Hamas. My mother's home was blown up by a Hezbollah rocket in Israel. She died several months later. There are tens of thousands of people who are rotting in Iranian prisons. There were 12 million Syrian refugees made refugees when Assad, at the support of this dreaded Iranian regime, sent them packing into oblivion as refugees and stateless. Thousands of Israelis have suffered, civilian Israelis, let alone the IDF, have suffered because of this regime's persistent determination to export revolution and terror. And throughout the Sunni Arab world, think of the tens of thousands, if not millions, of Arabs who have been victimized by this regime. When you go to Ashraf and you see the names and pictures of the people whose mothers and fathers of people in this room have sacrificed their lives because this regime has gone after them to persecute them and to murder them, we have to understand this is a personal matter. This is not just some theoretical policy issue. This damn regime has caused more damage to more people in the Middle East than anything that I can think of in centuries. Getting rid of it is not only important for our national security, the people in Israel, in the Arab world, and in Iran deserve better. Thank you very much, and I have the honor of introducing Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg. General Kellogg served in the first term of the Trump administration as a dedicated and distinguished national security advisor to Vice President Pence and as acting national security advisor to the President. He also served as Executive Secretary and Chief of Staff of the United States National Security Council after completing his service in the United States Army. General Kellogg is presently serving in a variety of consultative capacities, and I know that we all are honored to have him here with us today.
Well, thank you for having me today, and I really appreciate it. You know, the comments we're going to make, it's amazingly consistent. We didn't get together and kind of have these comments beforehand, but all of these comments now are rolling one after another, and there's a consistency to it that I think is important, and it's important that we talk about it today. And so thank you for allowing me to be part of the conference today. You know, I actually started working in the Iran issue back in 1979, and you heard Senator Tillis talk about that's when he first became associated with Iran. And I was a young Army major sitting in Stuttgart, Germany, Special Operations Command Europe, when the revolution started. And our job was to evacuate and try to move all the aircraft that were U.S. Aircraft that were there in Iran out. We didn't do a very good job with it, but that was our job, and so that's when it all started. You know, a reinforcement of what was said earlier. You know, and this is going to be, it's nonpartisan because it affects both sides, both Republican and Democrat. But I believe that, you know, we really have misunderestimated Iran for the last 45 years. We just haven't got it right. And as a former military guy, you know, I have to refer sometimes to my military background. And there was a classic military book written by a gentleman by the name of Sun Tzu that was 500 BC. And he said, and it's very true even today, he said, you know, if you know yourself and you know the enemy, you're never going to be in peril. But if you know yourself and not the enemy, your chances of winning and losing are basically equal. And we have been consistently wrong about Iran over the last 45 years, and I think President Trump finally started to get it right. We always seem to assume over the last 45 years that, you know, really, you know, when you look at the Iranian leadership, they're actually Jeffersonian Democrats in disguise, and we kind of had it wrong. And it's been a fault of both Republicans and Democrats as well. And I think there has to be recognition, and a real hard recognition now, especially today, that the previous policies toward the Iranian regime have failed to achieve the declared goal, which is a democratic Iran. You know, I'm reminded what the late Pulitzer Prize winner, a gentleman by the name of Will Durant, said when he actually wrote it, and I didn't read it, but there was an 11-volume treatise on the story of civilization. And he said, and this is a quote, "We seem to be working on the assumption that if we're nice to other people, they will be nice to us." And he commented, "I can tell you in the last 4,000 years, there's been no evidence to support that vision." Let me just briefly go back and kind of walk our way through it, because it faults both Republican and Democrat where we were at. Under President Clinton, we had a simple trade embargo because we sought a moderate mullah to be in charge of Iran. And at that time, the former director of the CIA, and we eventually became the Secretary of Defense, Bob Gates, wrote, he said, moderate mullah, said, in Iran, that does not exist. And George Bush declared Iran to be part of an axis of evil in 2002 State of the Union, and we condemned them for what they have done. We had President Obama come into office, reversing the Bush sanctions, even sending a letter to the then Supreme Leader declaring constant cooperation between the two countries. That was wrong. We actually had Senator Kerry talk about then the Secretary of State and the Special Envoy Rob Malley, who got a little bit of trouble recently, where he actually downplayed the kind of inspections we were going to have in IAEA. We basically thought that they were going to develop a peaceful nuclear program. And today what they're doing, they're enriching nuclear, the isotopes up to 85%. When you get to 90%, you're weapons grade on enrichment of uranium. Most peaceful uses of uranium, you enrich it between 5 and 6%. And so they must have an ulterior motive of where they're trying to go. So what happened is they came up with an event, and even Chuck Schumer broke ranks when he said this is not a good deal. And what happened, they had an unratified presidential executive agreement, which was not a treaty. That actually played well for us when President Trump came in, because it allowed President Trump to actually walk away from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the Iran nuclear deal. And we basically, the Trump administration, we basically said this is not a good place to be, and we wanted to work our way back from it. We began in 2018 a program, we called at the time maximum pressure on the Iranian regime. And economically, it began to work. And it was a program of time. Now, I will tell you, during that administration, the first Trump administration, we actually had people within the administration that thought this was a bad thing to go. Go back to my comment about Jefferson and Democrats. But the pressure began to work. For example, Iran's oil exports dropped from more than 2 million barrels a day to 400,000 barrels a day of export. And their foreign currency fell to $4 billion. And we continually kept pushing back on them, to include the elimination of the Quds Force commander, Qasem Soleimani, after the actions that he pulled off in trying to support the overthrow of the U.S. Embassy in New Year's Day of 2020. And so, but President Clinton came in, President Biden came in, and kind of reversed everything we were doing. So it went back to we looked at who they actually were. But here's the good news. The good news is the world is actually changing. And when you see what happened just recently in the past week with Syria, and the breakdown of what was going on and what was happening with Syria, and that would see what's happening with Iran, what's happening within Russia. Russia could not react to what was happening with Syria. They had the less of the capability they have with the Russian forces. They were forced to evacuate. So all of the problems you're starting to see are starting to change. And I noticed that the great Senator Cruz has come in, and so I'm going to really abbreviate my comments. But in the past week, in the past months, we're starting to see a change in the world, and it's a change for the better. And I think we should know that. So the path forward, constant pressure on the Iranian regime. I think we do that politically. We can do that regionally. We do that collectively with all our allies in the region. But also the power of the press, continually press it, and continually pressing the advantage that we have in Iran. This regime is tottering. And I will close this by saying they showed how weak they were when the Israelis went after them. Because what you saw, and I'll just use one example, when the Israelis went after the Iranians and they launched over 150 aircraft and they hit key sites, They did not lose a single aircraft, not one. That should tell everybody that Iran is not as strong as you think they are. They're a paper tiger, and you can push back on them, and I think you can push them to defeat. And with that, thank you very much. So, Senator, glad you're here. I want to give you
Thank you, General Kellogg. And I'm sure you don't mind if I just say on behalf of all of us, I wish you the greatest success in your future pursuits. Thank you. I now have the privilege of introducing Senator Cruz. And before I do, I want to first of all say, Senator, congratulations on a great re-election campaign. Thank you. Thank you. My, oh my, I would hate to go up against you in Texas. Senator, your leadership and your inspirational support for Madam Rajavi and the NCRI, and most importantly, for the cause of a free Iran and how to get there, and your recommendations and years of proposals and ideas that have helped serve the American people is an inspiration to all of us. You serve on the Foreign Relations Committee and on the Senate Committee on the Judiciary, but more importantly, you're a national figure. You're a leader on media channels. People hold on to what you have to say, not only on domestic policy, but also foreign policy. And so over the next few months, as the administration looks for new ideas to take what essentially is a new opportunity, yes, there are risks, but a new opportunity to finally push this regime over the cliff. We're all going to be looking for your words of wisdom. We welcome you here.
Well, thank you so very much. It is great to be with so many tremendous friends. And let me just say, change is in the air. You know, I will tell you, on election night, we had a big party in Houston on election night. We had had so many members of the Iranian American community in Texas out knocking on doors, out making phone calls, out volunteering, out engaging, saying this election matters. And I will tell you what, the results on Election Day, November 2024, were consequential for the United States, and they were consequential for the world. But there is nobody on planet Earth who had a worse day on Election Day than the Ayatollah Khamenei. The Ayatollah is a theocratic, homicidal, genocidal lunatic. His stated desire is not subtle, nor is it complicated. When he leads chants of death to Israel and death to America, I believe him. When he refers to Israel as the little Satan and America as the great Satan, I believe him. And if history teaches anything, it is that bullies and tyrants do not respect weakness, but they only respect strength. And I, for one, am incredibly pleased that on January 20th of next year, a new commander-in-chief is coming to town. And I will tell you, the Ayatollah is shaking in terror. We will return on January 20th to a maximum pressure policy. We will cut off this cruel and oppressive regime from resources from every direction possible. That includes vigorously imposing sanctions. That includes using every tool we have to shut down the nuclear research facilities, including the research facility in Fordow. And we are going to cut off their oil. In the middle of the first Trump administration, there was a vigorous debate about whether to end the Iran nuclear deal. Within the Trump administration, both the State Department and the Defense Department argued we should stay in the deal. I vociferously disagreed. I spent 10, 20, 30 different visits with President Trump in the Oval Office on Air Force One, urging that he pull out of the deal, and President Trump made the right decision and pulled out of that deal. Afterwards, there was a major debate about waivers that remained in place, the most important of which was an oil waiver. Even after we'd pulled out of that deal, there was an oil waiver that allowed Iran to continue to sell oil. At the time, Iran was selling roughly 1 million barrels a day of oil. Once again, there was a fight within the administration about what to do concerning the oil waiver. This time, the battle lines were a little different. The Department of State, once again, was arguing for the wrong position. State argued, do not end the oil waiver. If you end the oil waiver, the global price of oil will skyrocket. The price of gasoline here at home will skyrocket. The Department of Energy, which you might think would know something about energy, said that's nonsense. There's plenty of global supply of oil. We can end the oil waiver. We can impose sanctions, and it's not going to materially affect the price of oil. Again, I engaged repeatedly with President Trump and said we've got to end the oil waiver. Again, the president agreed with me and overruled his own Secretary of State. We ended the oil waiver, and we now know the answer to that dispute, which is state was wrong and energy was right. The oil waiver ended, Iran's oil sales plummeted, and the global price of oil barely moved at all. At the end of the Trump administration, Iran was selling roughly 300,000 barrels a day of oil, down from 1 million barrels a day when the oil waiver was in effect. Unfortunately, the Biden administration came in and reversed all of those policies. The administration came in with a policy of appeasement towards Iran and most disastrously stopped enforcing the oil sanctions. And Iran's oil sales, as a result, rose from 300,000 barrels a day to today roughly 2 million barrels a day. The delta is $100 billion that flowed in to fund the Ayatollah, that funded Hamas, that funded Hezbollah, that funded war against America, that funded war against Israel. And I'm here to tell you on January 20th, those oil sanctions are coming back. The Ayatollah is in panic because revenue for the regime is about to disappear. Not only that, but Iran's proxies, from Hamas to Hezbollah to Bashar Assad in Syria, have all utterly collapsed. Iran is weak. They are scared. And I will tell you, I, for one, have for a long time been quite willing to call unequivocally for regime change in Iran. The Ayatollah will fall, the mullahs will fall, and we will see free and democratic elections in Iran. And as the men and women here know full well, it is the people of Iran who have suffered so viciously under this cruel and tyrannical regime. Freedom is coming, and it can come with a speed that can astonish almost everyone. Just ask Bashar Assad. The world remains a dangerous place, but I will tell you, I believe the United States of America is the indispensable nation. And when the American president, when the American commander-in-chief is weak and feckless and ineffective, every enemy of America gets stronger and America is at greater risk than ever before. And conversely, when we have a strong and vital commander-in-chief who will stand up to our enemies are terrified, and that is a very good thing. So I want to say to the men and women here, thank you for your courage, thank you for your hard work, thank you for your passion, thank you for your willingness to speak truth. I'm going to close as I opened. Change is coming, and it is coming very soon. Thank you.
Wow, 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 wow. Changes in the air. I assure all of you that we're going to wrap this up in a few moments. We have only two wonderful speakers left as you enjoy the rest of your meal. Senator Cruz, thank you so much for your leadership and for your words. The role that he is going to play with the incoming administration is going to be essential to, just realizing that the Iranians were able to get an oil waiver that put $100 billion more in their pocket to fund the havoc that they've wreaked on the Middle East, courtesy of people in my own party. I never will figure it out. Anyhow, I want to introduce to you General Todd Walters, who served from 2019 to 2022 as the commander of the U.S. European Command in Stuttgart, I believe, okay, as well as concurrently as NATO's Supreme Allied Commander in Europe. General, we welcome you to this stage to hear the wonderful things that you're going to offer us in terms of ideas and recommendations.
Well, we've heard some fantastic words this afternoon, and let me just start by acknowledging what I have observed as the positive campaign momentum that you all have displayed today. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge who has just represented this great cause. Our Senate, members of our Congress, their staffers, general officers, ambassadors, and all of those individuals are the least important individuals here on these hallowed grounds right now. You in the audience who are willing to roll up your sleeves and give your blood, sweat, and tears to this cause represent the change that is coming and the positive impact that we will have on planet Earth to generate more peace. And that is what we're after. I will try not to repeat any of the very, very sage comments that we just heard, but I wanted to acknowledge several strategic imperatives. The first strategic imperative: the people of Iran do not want this current regime. We must support the people of Iran and neutralize this current regime. The second strategic imperative: generating peace across planet Earth will not occur until we find ways to allow for a peaceful Middle East. And peace in the Middle East will be achieved via a free and democratic Republic of Iran. And this group, at all levels, represents the cause that we must embrace to succeed. The global awareness of those two strategic imperatives must be proliferated, and we can do that together by gatherings such as this and getting the word out, as General Jones talked about, amongst the staffers that represent our United States Congress. I would just like to acknowledge what is so obvious about what just occurred, but I would like to do so through quickly a military lens as a previous commander in Europe representing NATO and the great nations that support the European continent. The most glaring, obvious change as a result of the fall of Assad is the fact that the nexus that exists in nefarious activity from Iran to the West to Syria, to the Eastern Mediterranean, to Eastern Europe, to the Baltic Sea, to the Arctic, and to the Atlantic has just been broken. The proxies that this terrible regime relies upon to gain influence and capability from east to west to the Eastern Mediterranean has been broken. And this is something that we need to acknowledge, we need to make others aware of, we need to educate, and now, most importantly, we need to act upon. And as so many of our briefers highlighted, and I think they did so with great precision, we do so via strength, not weakness. We do so by being precise in exactly what it is we need to do to ensure that we can have a free and democratic Iran. And as you heard from so many of our speakers, we must go forward in making sure that we can find ways to get the regime done, to ensure that we are precise in the neutralization of any nuclear capability that exists in Iran, as the ambassador so sagely pointed out. And we must have a plan in place to move forward. And as the great Madame spoke to us when we started, she has a 10-point plan. So many of you are very, very aware of her 10-point plan. She most recently spoke last month in November, giving us additional icing on the cake of that 10-point plan. And I believe that our job is to make sure that we are ready to implement a 10-point plan, and we are so ready to find ways to provide architecture that will exist once the regime falls, so that we can get running at full speed to do all of the things that our senators talked about, that our ambassadors talked about, and that our generals talked about. Let me stop here by saying I can't thank all of you enough for what you've done and for what you'll continue to do. It is a noble cause. Here in this hallowed building, in this hallowed conference center, we are talking about something that is going to generate greater peace across planet Earth, and it's very exciting for all of us. God bless you all, and thank you.
Before I have the privilege of introducing our last speaker, I want to first of all thank General Walters And I also want to thank the media for being here. Those of you in the media realize that we're at this point in our foreign policy where decisions are going to be made that will impact Americans' national security for years to come. And as we have heard today, what is taking place in the Middle East impacts each and every one of us at home. And so for the media that is here that is carrying the message, I thank you for being here. Finally, I have the privilege of introducing a former ambassador, a fellow ambassador, I'm the former ambassador, the Honorable Mohammed al-Hadrami, who is currently the ambassador of the Republic of Yemen to the United States. Before that, the ambassador was appointed Minister of Foreign Affairs of Yemen in September of 2019. Mr. Ambassador, your country has suffered on the front lines against the axis of resistance and evil more than most Americans can appreciate. The Houthi rebels have done everything possible to virtually destroy the freedom of the seas and the freedom of the Yemeni people. We welcome you to the stage.
Thank you very much for having me here today. I'm really honored to be here, especially after the powerful statement that we heard, especially from Senators Ted Cruz, and I agree with him completely. Changes in the air, and I think the Yemeni people and the Iranian people deserve a chance to rid themselves of the tyranny of the Iranian regime and their proxy, and I hope that will come very fast. I am honored to address you today on behalf of Yemen, a nation striving for peace despite enduring profound challenges and a decade of conflict exacerbated by the Iranian regime, relentless ambition to dominate the region. Yemen's suffering is not merely a tragedy. It is the deliberate result of Iran's support for chaos and regional instability. For more than 10 years, Iran has financed and armed the Houthi terrorist group, providing them with lethal weapons to destabilize Yemen and threaten international shipping lane in the Red Sea. Tragically, Iran's support has enabled the Houthis to become a menace not only to Yemen, but to the region and the world. The Red Sea is a critical commercial shipping corridor that handles 10% of global trade and over 30% of annual cargo shipping. The U.S. alone spends so much in the billions defending attacks that the Iranian regimes spend so little on. The Houthis must be stopped, and Yemenis can stop them. We have the resolve, manpower to counter the Houthis and the Iranian threat in Yemen and the Red Sea, but we cannot do it alone. We need your support. While the Houthis receive free oil and gas from Iran, they, using Iranian weapons, have crippled Yemen's ability to export our own resources, hindering our government's capacity to pay salaries, provide services, or mount an effective counteroffensive. This can change with the U.S. support. Yemenis have the determination and ability to defeat the Houthis, restore state institutions, and bring peace to our nation. And a new U.S. strategy is critical to help us do just that. We deeply appreciate the United States' support politically and in a humanitarian aspect. The U.S. is among the biggest and largest humanitarian donors for us, and we thank them for their generosity. However, a new approach to addressing the Houthis' threat is urgently needed. The Houthis are not inherently powerful. Their strength comes solely from Iran and its revolutionary guards. With the right strategy, this support can be neutralized. I propose 3 measures for the new U.S. policy on this aspect. First, designating the Houthis as a foreign terrorist organization. This step, similar to the designations of Hezbollah and the IRGC, would send a strong message that their actions, terrorizing civilians, targeting maritime security, and destabilizing the regions, are unacceptable. Second, supporting the Yemeni government and military to liberate the port of Hodeidah. Securing this vital port in the Red Sea west of Yemen will enable us to protect the Red Sea, and it will also pressure them to engage in meaningful peace talks. It would cut the support of Iran to Yemen. It's just as simple as that. And it's not going to cost much for us, Yemenis, and the military to liberate Hodeidah. We were about this close to do it in 2018, but we were stopped by the international community. I think it's time that we liberate that port. Third, targeting Houthi leadership to dismantle their command structure. This has to happen. Holding militia leaders accountable for their atrocities will weaken their operations and disrupt their ability to act with impunity. These measures will enhance the security of the Red Sea, save the taxpayers in this country a lot of money, hold the Houthis accountable for their actions, and provide the leverage necessary to bring them to the negotiating table, paving the way for enduring peace in Yemen. I'm afraid this is the only way. Diplomacy alone does not work with the Iranian regimes and their proxies. We have tried it for so many years. Peace through strength works. And I hope and I'm confident that one day the Yemeni people and the Iranian people would be able to free themselves from the tyranny of the Iranian regimes and their proxies. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Let us not forget that Yemen, a dear friend of the United States, deserves the support of the American people. We need them, and we need to defeat the Houthis. Let me close by thanking all of you for being here. Let me close by thanking the senators who took time out of their schedules to be with us today. Thank you to all of the distinguished speakers who joined us, and for those who have tuned in and who will watch these proceedings. And most importantly, I want to thank Madam Rajavi, President of the NCRI, for her leadership and for all that she means to us here in Washington to provide a roadmap to help free Iran. I want to say one thing. You know, there's been a cottage industry in Washington to promote the goals and objectives of this dreaded regime. They hide behind think tanks, and some of them essentially decry the NCRI and say that it doesn't have the support. They even parade the young Shah, the pretender to the throne, around as if he somehow or other is the answer, the proper response to the Iranian people. You saw here that there were Democratic senators who came to say to you, we don't buy this. We see a coalition of hundreds of thousands of Iranian leaders around the world who've been inspired by Madam Rajavi and by the NCRI. I didn't come to do this because of any reason other than the fact that I deeply care for the Iranian people. I hope that you staffers who have been here and for the senators who will look to you for the ideas and support will use this point not only to decry the failures of my friends in the previous administration, but also to give support to the incoming administration. Yes, we can make this a bipartisan effort and not a strictly partisan endeavor. Our friends in the Middle East, in Israel, in Iran, and Syria deserve no less. October 7th meant a lot to many of us, to me, to my family, to so many tens of thousands of Palestinians who have suffered at the hands of Hamas and Hezbollah. It'll be remembered for many things, but I want it to be remembered as the day that the mullahs finally miscalculated. They miscalculated by supporting the launching of this dreaded Hamas attack, terrorist attack on Israel. And we are watching them suffering the consequences. In the days ahead, we have much work to do. I hope that you will join the NCRI's efforts. I hope you will support them. I hope you will open their doors to their representatives. I hope, most importantly, will you view this as an inspirational moment and not let politics get in the way of success. Thank you for being here today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your patience. We do look forward to seeing you again in the days ahead. And thank you to my wonderful senator and boss, Senator Edward Kennedy, who's looking down on us and giving us inspiration today. God bless you.